Welcome everybody to today's Four Pees Café. Our session today will be about Picador, specifically Picador 3D. You might already be familiar with the Picador application, the treeDiM developer. So we're going to look at how to create 3D packaging designs with the Picador software. And in a second step, in a future cafe, 2 weeks from now, we will be comparing the 3D workflow to a Creative Edge IC 3D, which is also an application that Four Pees has to offer, but which has a bit of a different purpose. With Picador, we will be looking at the CAD side, the development side, how to design your box for production. And with IC3D, you're always looking how to create a visually stunning box that can be used to create digital photographs. So you can create photorealistic results for packagings, for all kinds of packagings, and then add all kinds of finishing effects to them, which is also a really cool feature. But today is about Picador. Picador has several modules. There is the Paclip module, which is essentially a database of packagings. In there, you'll find some standards like the FEFCO and ECMA standards for corrugated board and folding carton, respectively. And you can use parametrics to change the size of the box from the standard. So you can grab a design and you can on the go make it a certain width, height, and depth. So you can have a specific design that you want to create. Then they have the 2D module, where you can start from scratch, just design a box using their CAD tools. Or you can take a box, but maybe from Paclip, maybe from some other application you designed it with, and you can import it from any standardized file format and change your design as you want. And of course, in relation to Paclip, you can create your own parametrized designs in Picador 2D with your own variables and then use those in Paclip so you can have your own design available in any possible size, depending on how you parameterized it. This is a quick, just some quick information about the other modules. We're not really going to be going into those today. Today is all about the 3D module, but if you're interested, we have some videos about Paclip and Picador 2D on our YouTube channel already. You can go have a look at those. And if you want a personalized demo, of course, we're available to give you a demonstration of our solutions. So we can always set up a meeting and talk about what you want to do. Today is about the Picador 3D module. It is a coffee, so we have to have some coffee every once in a while. And in 3D, we can take our 2D design and we can basically create a digital prototype. So instead of having to cut out your CAD design on your own cutting table and then start folding it physically, you can take your CAD straight into your 3D application and fold it up digitally. It will give you a pretty similar experience as having it in your hands. You'll see if something isn't quite where it's supposed to be, if you're missing something, if maybe you have something too much, you'll see a bit of everything there. That's what we're going to focus on today. So, I should have actually switched slides already to this. So what can you do in Picador 3D? You can open up any of your Picador 2D files. They have to come from 2D. To work well in Picador 3D, but Picador 2D, Picador Geometry, has the ability to import pretty much any standardized format. So you can open up PDFs, Illustrator files, DXF files, all that kind of stuff into Picador 2D and then go to 3D from there. Then you can fold your crease lines. You can do that step by step to make it more understandable. And you can also combine multiple parts of an assembly. So if you have a packaging that exists out of multiple parts, or even more complicated, if you have a point of sales assembly where you have these shelves and side pieces and top pieces and all these little things that you want to put together, you can actually do all of that inside your Picador 3D. So take all of the multiple parts, fold them all up individually, put them all together and see how that all works. And you can create an animation of the whole process, start to finish, that you can then save and send to your customer. Let's say that you make point of sales boxes like for some kind of food product, and you want to have those installed at a supermarket. You can create a 3D PDF which contains the entire animation on how to put those things together, how to combine all the individual parts, and you can send that to the supermarkets along with your actual cardboard pieces, so they can open it up in any kind of Acrobat reader and see how it goes together and implements the point of sales material that way. Now, in these cafes, we typically don't want to spend our entire time staring at a presentation. So let's get into the actual demonstration. This is a quick preview of the file we're going to create today. It's a packaging for a whiskey bottle, and we're going to go through the creation process of the whole thing. I have to move my cursor here for a second, and there we go. Now, of course, with the cafes, this is more than just a demo. This is a place for conversation and discussion. So if you have any questions at any time during the demonstration about the application, about how to do stuff, if something's possible, feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question, interrupt me, because I don't shut up a lot. So feel free to interrupt me to make yourself heard. We can answer your question, or if it's still going to come, I'll just, we'll see that in a minute. And we can handle all of that. If you just want to ask your question in the chat, you can use the Zoom chat. Ask a question there. We have some with us who will be keeping an eye on those questions and interrupt me for you. So you don't even have to interrupt me yourself. So feel free to do that whenever. Right now on the screen, we have the box I designed in the Picador 2D module. So this is the CAD tool. I have already prepared this box in advance. Why? Because I wanted to focus on the 3D module and not on drawing the box from scratch. But if you're not familiar with the Picador tool, essentially what we have here is a fully functional CAD design application with all the tools necessary to create your own design from scratch relatively easily. Creating this box, aside from the maths, took me about an hour, starting from zero. Actually, no, that's with the math. Without the math, it would have been a bit quicker. So basically, you could just grab a rectangle tool, draw a box, define a certain size that you want. So let's say it's 10 centimeters wide and 30 centimeters high. I have to watch the right number of zeros here. Confirm, then I get that rectangle. If I need to have more faces on this because I want to have 4 sides to this box, I can draw this out and I can see I need actually a bunch more of these. And you'll see that now I have 4 faces, and they're also immediately automatically divided by crease lines. So I have my cut lines around the box and I have my crease lines in the middle. And just like that, you can create your own design. I'll just remove these lines again so they don't mess with my drawing. Now, some special features I used is there is a tool that can help you make corners rounded. So I use that in some places. Same here, this is all just done by using the tool that rounds off corners. The bottom piece here, I actually didn't even draw myself. I stole that from the parametric design tool in the Picador Paclip application. This is one of those semi-automatic snap locks that are easy to make a flattened box stand up with a solid bottom. Yeah, so that's some of the things I would like to draw some attention to. And then we have our line types, right? So we have our cut lines and our crease lines. I just have those available here. So everything that's red is a cut line. The blue ones are crease lines. And then I use some other line types, which I just turned off when we started the demo. We have construction lines that can be used to interact with the other line types. So let's say that I'm still using my rectangle box. I can actually go near any of these lines, any of these intersections, and I get a little aid in my design. When I click there, I am perfectly in the corner of that field there. So that allows me to be really accurate in design. That's what the construction lines are for. And I also used dimension lines to indicate all the different sizes of my box. And pieces, for example, the pieces with the hashing in it is meant for glue. The pieces, these circles here that I drew there, were just as a guide for myself, but we're going to do something with that in the 3D application. So once I'm happy with my design, completely done, now I want to get into the prototyping, right? I want to take the design I made and I want to see if it actually makes sense. I want to make it into the 3D application. Well, there's a button here at the top that connects the 2D application with the 3D application. If you click this button, it will open up the drawing you have open into Picador 3D. And you see the whole application is a bit different in style. You also see that all the lines that aren't important, so the construction lines and the text lines and the dimension lines, have been removed. So I only end up with my actual line types in the 3D application. I can move around in here, I can take a look at stuff, and I have another bunch of drawing tools. So I could still make some changes here. I have the option to, for example, draw an extra rectangle somewhere in my file. Now, typically, I wouldn't advise into doing that. These tools are meant to help you quickly set something right. Like if you notice that there is a problem with your file for your 3D, you could use these tools to quickly change something for your process. But anything you change here will only be changed inside your 3D file. So changes you make here do not return to the 2D file. They change in the 3D file. So while this can help you fix something for your 3D model, it doesn't necessarily help you a lot in the 2D CAD file. You can save these files separately and take them back, but it's not an automatic link. It's a different file that you open then. So I have two objects here. I have my box itself, and I have an insert that I want to create. You see that these circles I had in the text color are actually gone now. We don't have those here. We're going to do something smart to create those. Imagine that, something smart in our webinar. So once we're in this application, we can start the 3D process. And there's actually a few ways to import 3D objects into our Picador 3D working space. There's 5 different tools here, and all of those have something to do with creating something 3D. For example, I could import a 3D object from a library that is already present inside Picador. So here are some files, and you can see they're French because they include an Eiffel Tower for you to add to your packaging. So that's one way to do it. I could use any one of these models. That's nice. Then there is a second one that allows me to import solids, which essentially allows me to take any 3D asset I have and import that as an object. And I'm actually going to use that. I am going to create, to use a solid, because I want this to be a box for a bottle. So I want to have a 3D bottle. And I actually have a model made. I got this from IC3D, incidentally. So we'll see how to get that bottle design 2 weeks from now in the other session. But I want to use this later. So let's just have that bottle ready already. Back to my 2D entities, I can see my chart again. There's 3 more, and the 3 last ones have to do with the drawing I have here. I'm going to skip the third one for a second, because that's the one I'm actually going to use later. So we have the solid by revolution. For the kind of file we have right now, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I can take a drawing and revolve it. So I'll call it revolution, so we can throw it away in a second. I can revolve it around the x-axis, you see? So now what it did was it took my entire drawing and it made a circle of it around the axis. You can see it's more like, well, it has 11 angles apparently. If we want this to be rounder, we can up these steps a bit and we'll see that the shape gets rounder. That's one way to create a 3D object. Not exactly the way that I would usually go, because, well, it doesn't really fit with our 3D prototyping in Picador. Another way to do something is extrusion. So we can extrude our drawing upwards. That doesn't always work very well when you're using a drawing that has crease lines and extra cutouts and stuff, but let's have a look at what happens. Then we get this kind of file. So it extrudes all my lines upwards and it creates a shape that way. Of course, again, not something that's very, very useful for what we're currently doing. So another file that we're not really going to use. But what we are going to use is the 3D fold up. And with that one, we can fold our crease lines. So I'll call this box because I want to have two different parts folded up. I can fold up my crease lines and create a 3D folded box from my drawing. You see, even though I clicked it, nothing really changed. That's because I have two parts in my 2D CAD file, and it doesn't know which file I want to fold up. So I have to select one. I'll go ahead and I'll select my big one. I'll want to start with the box, and I'll select one of the sides that I want to use as the reference pane. Everything is going to fold around the pane I select right now. So I'm going to select the back side of the box for now. And then I get my cardboard piece. If your drawing, your technical drawing is nice and accurate, so all the lines connect properly, all the cut lines connect where they should connect, then immediately you'll get a nice piece of cardboard the way you want to see it. If your drawing comes from, for example, Illustrator, and two lines aren't perfectly attached, you might see sometimes you get a little bit of error messaging. And then you'll have to take the box back to 2D or use the 2D drawing tools we have available here to fix whatever's wrong. Now, I like to change my view to a perspective view because the orthographic one kind of messes with my 3D vision. And I like to turn on the folding lines because that makes it easier for me to see where my box is actually going to be folded. Now, the white side is the outside of the box and the brown side is the inside of the box. I like to put the inside up because usually we're folding towards the inside, so that makes it easier for me to fold my box. You also see where I had the window, it cut out the piece that had a cut line around it. So now there's a little hole in my box in the middle there. Okay, so all good and well. Now we want to fold. We have this big slider here. If I move the slider, you'll see all my crease lines start folding up. And I can fold my box together, and there we go. We have a box and it's all folded together and it's fine. Yeah, true. But if you send this to a shop and you tell them, well, this is how you do it, they might be a little bit confused because, you know, they don't have enough hands to do all of that at once. Also, it's not physically possible. So instead of doing that, we'll go step by step. And the second tab here allows us to do that. So I now have a step 0, which is nothing, and a step 1, which is everything. If I go to step 0 and I insert a step, then I can start folding stuff. To be realistic, I like to fold my glued area together first. So I'll fold my glue flap and I'll fold this one. You see these two come together, and there we go. That's already one fold done. Then I'll add another step. I'll select 90 degrees. I can select what kind of fold I want here. So I can either select one of the default or just fill in any value I want to add. And now I can say, actually, all of these had to be 90-degree angles. And now it's folding all of those by 90 degrees. Now, what I actually did was have it physically fold like this. So if I start my animation, we'll see first it folds together and it's glued there, and then it folds upwards. And that is how typically you would have those boxes happen. Now, the rest of it is not yet done. So of course, the rest of it doesn't make a lot of sense yet. Let's go back to definition by step. I'll go to step 2. There we go. And I can insert another step. Now for these, we kind of have to glue these areas to these areas that has to glue together. That's a bit difficult to show properly with the kind of animation and steps we have here. It takes a bit of time. So instead, I'm going to make it a little bit simpler, and I'm just going to fold them up together and then pretend that we're gluing them. So I'm going to say, actually, I want that to be like 91, 92 degrees. So I'll fold these up, and then I'll say I want to inverse, so -2 or 3 degrees these. So these are folding outwards a little bit, and that will make them glued to the other faces in a second. And then I have to go back to something around 90 degrees for these. And that should look somewhat realistic for the kinds of closure we're looking for, right? So now we see that these sides glue to these other sides, and they also overlap in the areas they're supposed to overlap. So I'm kind of cheating how that would actually look once you're done. Of course, now if I play that step in the animation, it'll just fold them all at the same time. But that's a bit difficult to do properly. So then I'll turn my box upright so I can have a look at the top, and I can add some extra steps. I'll insert a step where I fold these flaps, and I'll insert another step. Actually, I don't have to because I already have a step 5 where the whole thing is folded up. So now I have a step-by-step folding animation for my entire box. And we can go back to our first step and click the play button, and we see how this works. So the thing folds in two, it folds open, the bottom is folded together, then the flaps are folded close, and then the lid closes. And there we go. We have an animation that does the entire folding of my box. And of course, this is only one box. That's a fairly simple thing to do. Once you have multiple parts, you can fold all of those up individually and then put them all together. And we're going to show a little bit of something like that as well. First off, though, I'd like to add my artwork to this. Now, we have options here to add exterior and interior materials. So let's look at the interior because that's the face I have visually in my face right now. I can choose a color. So let's just make this a disco. I can pick any of these colors or just go to more colors and pick even something else. And I can use that as the color for my face of my box. But of course, I have artwork for this. So I can use my actual artwork. Let's see if this all works properly. There we go. So what I did was, in my Picador 2D application, I have my technical drawing. I have the power to export this to a whole bunch of standard formats. The same way I can import essentially a whole list of formats. Let's have a look at what the possibilities are here. If I open up this list, we can see we have PDF, we have Illustrator, we have EPS, CF2, DXF, DES, which is the Picador format. All of these are possible files that you can open with Picador 2D. So the application really is quite open to any kind of workflow you might have. The same options are pretty much available on export. So if I say File Export, I can save this file as PDF, EPS, CF2, Illustrator, DXF, and a whole bunch of other formats. So it definitely fits in whatever workflow you're working with. To work with my designs, I went for Illustrator. So I saved my file as an Illustrator file. And then, of course, I opened it up. And this is what it looks like in Illustrator. So some of the neat features here is that the colors that I used before in my Picador application, so we have all our colors, are now present as layers. So I got separate layers in Illustrator for everything that is a crease line, a cut line, an annotation, or a dimension. All of those get a separate layer. So that means I can easily turn off my crease lines, which I don't want to see in my design. Actually, the same thing for cut lines. Well, actually, the same thing for everything, right? I don't want any of these practical lines in my artwork. So what I did was I opened up my artwork in my file, and this is what it looks like. So something else that I did in this case, so I turned off all those cut and crease layers, and then I matched the artboard with the outermost cut layer. That's because when I take this image into Picador 3D in a second, it will automatically stretch whatever image I take to the edges of my cardboard. So if you don't want your artwork to be stretched in any way, what you have to do is prepare your artboard in a way that it fits perfectly. That's why I changed the artwork to fit the outermost cut lines. Then I save this file as a JPEG. This JPEG file can then be opened as a texture in my 3D application. So if we go back here, I can go to my white side, which is my exterior side, and I can say I want to have a texture, and I can just click Add, and then I can choose a JPEG image. So I can choose this image here. I can say open, and we'll see, there we go. We have our artwork perfectly laid out on our box the way we want to see it. I don't actually have anything prepared for the inside, but it doesn't really matter because it's just cardboard color and that's fine. So there we go. Another thing you can do is you can have edge material. In this case, it's kind of a folding carton box, so you typically won't have edge material. But I can also choose a texture, and there are default cardboard textures available. So I can use, this is a bit trippy, let's just zoom out a little bit so I can turn this thing properly and then zoom in. You can see the edge of my cardboard has now a corrugated board texture. And that kind of helps when you're working with these big corrugated board boxes. But for my current folding carton box, I don't really need to have a texture there. So let's just not do that. There we go. So there's one thing left in these tabs at the bottom, and that's the referential tab. If I go to the referential tab, you'll see we get X, Y, and Z axes in our 3D space. And that is to orient our design and to manipulate it in our 3D space. Is it necessary at this point? No, because we only have our one object. But in our second step here, we will create an assembly with multiple parts. And then having a referential point that works makes a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold up my box just the way we saw before. There we go. And now I know that my x-axis is my horizontal axis, my y-axis is supposed to be my up axis, and my z-axis is the depth. So this is kind of the view that I would expect to have. So the box is not exactly where I would like it right now. So what I can do is I can define where it has to be. So I can say I want to use the bounding box lower left coordinates. I'll say initialize, and now you see that my origin point spotted over there. And I think I also want to turn my box around. So let's turn it around the y-axis, so it's right, and then initialize again. Oh, actually, let's turn it back. So I guess I can't really properly turn it around, or I have to turn it around the y, and then turn my numbers here up again. So the z would be 0, and the x would be probably like 100. Nope, minus 100. Minus 100. And that way my box ends up where it's supposed to be, in the positive areas of all three axes. That makes sense in a second when we put it in the assembly. So now we have part one of our box completed, and I can just take that box and drag it over here into my assembly. And now we see in my assembly, we have both my box and that bottle that I had earlier, and they are in the same 3D space, except my bottle isn't exactly in a nice spot right now. So I can take my bottle, just double click it to make sure I have it selected, and then I can move it around by dragging the axes. So I'll put it somewhere next to my box. That way we can have it look at it in a second. I'll put it on the right side. There we go. And I can make sure that it's sort of kind of on the same plane, because that visually makes a bit more sense. So there we go. Now we have two objects in our space, and we can actually put those together. We can put that bottle in that box. But we won't forget about our other entity. We have our insert here. So I'll just click, this is kind of a review of how to fold up a box. So let's do it again. I select my fold up carton. I can call this one insert, say OK. Now I select the reference pane that I want to use for this one. So I'll just pick the bottom one, I suppose. And I get a new piece of cardboard, a very long piece of cardboard here. So I'll make it perspective, I'll add my crease lines, and we'll go through the same thing. I'll go to the bottom, definition by step, and start folding stuff up. Insert a step. In step 2, I have my 90-degree angle. I want to fold these things 90 degrees. That's kind of a little foot for, I didn't get that one. There we go. A little foot for this thing to sit on. Then I'll turn it around. There we go. And now I have to fold this thing upwards. Now I kind of did some maths and figured out how much it's supposed to go up. So it comes down to about 111.5 degrees. And that will be a negative thing because it's folding upwards instead of inwards. So I can select that one and it goes in the direction I want it to be. So there we go. And then I can take this one. I'm actually not going to fold that one very much because we'll see in a second why. I'll make that one like 30 degrees. There we go. And then I have to zoom in a little bit. And the rest of them are just 90-degree angles. So insert, no, I don't actually have to insert this step. 90 for this, this, and this. Oh, this one. There we go. And now everything is kind of folded up the way I intended it to be. I'm going to insert an extra step here where I fold up that one angle that I gave 30 to the proper dimensions. So let's make that 111.5. Oh, I folded one of those the wrong direction. Back here, that thing has to be minus 90. And it's the same story for the other two. So you have to go that way and you have to go that way. There we go. And then in my next step, I'll have to do that as well. No, that's fine. Okay, this is how it's supposed to be. There we go. So this is my insert. This will go into my box. Now, of course, we can't put a bottle through this. This is a solid piece of cardboard. I had those little circles drawn on it in the CAD application, but I don't have those anymore. Well, one of the features we have in the Picador 3D application is that we can have a solid object interact with a plane, which is our cardboard box. So now that I have this thing, and I'm actually going to remove that third step because we don't need it. Yeah, this is fine. I can take this insert and I can put it into the assembly, just like we did before. Oh, I should have fixed those things first. Let's do that again with the correct referential point. So I'll go to reference, I'll fold this thing up, I'll say bounding box lower left, initialize, and this is actually, I think, yeah, completely how we want. No, it has to be rotated. So I have to rotate it around the z-axis, I think like this, and then I have to move it 100 on this. Nope. Am I looking at the right way? The y-axis was in the wrong direction. It's supposed to be like this. So rotate around the x like that. Rotate it around the y like this. And then I have to go into the direction of the x by about 100. So let's see, like this. There we go. This is how it's supposed to be. And if I insert it now, it will be in the pretty much exactly inside my other box, which will make it easy for me to have it match up with everything. Take the insert, put it in the assembly. There we go. Now the insert is immediately inside my box, which makes it a bit easier. It looks like I have to move it slightly to the right. So let's add a few millimeters to the plus side, and it has to go slightly down. So let's put it slightly down. How is that? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now that I have both the insert in the box and the bottle here, all my pieces of my assembly are present. I can now have this bottle interact with the insert. So I'll move the bottle inside my packaging. I'll try to center it somewhat. So let's put it completely away where it's supposed to end up, which is going to be still a bit more to the right. There we go. This is about as far as it goes. You can see it now through the window inside my box there. And now I can say I want that bottle to interact with that insert. So I have this option here. solid foldable intersection. If I select that, I get a pop-up. I can choose my solids, which is my insert, and I can choose my imported solids, which is my bottle. And I can say, okay. And now it's calculating a bunch of stuff. And if we go back to my 2D entities, what we'll see now is that it has created extra cut lines into my insert. And these cut lines can now be a part of my 3D object. These are automatically generated based on where my bottle intersected with my packaging. That's also why we have, for example, 2 circles here. My bottle was hollow, so it interacted twice with the mesh, and we have 2 circles here. Luckily, the application doesn't really care about that inner circle. It's only going to take the outer one. Now, one thing that is kind of sad is that I'll have to fold it up again because it ends up here in the 2D entities. So I can go back to my create foldable solids. I can call this inserts with hole, say okay, and I'll have to just let it calculate for a second. There we go. I'll have to grab this thing again. There we go. We have this shape, and now we have a bunch of holes in it. I can put it back into perspective, into seeing my lines, and basically do the steps I did before again. So I'll insert a step. I'll have it on 90 degrees. Fold up these 3. Just put it in view. There we go. U and U as well. Then turn the whole thing around. Select my minus 111.5 for this one. Take the 30 degrees for the next one. And I'm doing these 30 degrees because in my final animation, it's going to look a little bit better if I already take into account that they're going to be folded at 90 degrees. U, and U. There we go. And then I insert another step where I put that fold up to where it's supposed to be, which is 111.5. Double click, and we end up with the thing we had before. And I can go to step 3 and remove step 3. There we go. Now I can take that insert with hole. I'll have to set my referential point right again. I almost forgot. There we go. Lower left, initialize, put my XYZ the way that's nature intended, which is Z over there, X over there, there we go, and Y up to the top. So just like this. I'll rotate around my X to turn it upright, and I'll rotate around my Y to get it in the right orientation, and then I'll just do that 100 difference to get it pretty much where I need it to be. There we are. And then I can take that insert and put it into the assembly. Now it's right where the other one was. So it's, oh, actually it's again slightly up. So I'll have to select it and move it down slightly so it's inside my box. There we go. That makes more sense. Now, of course, we don't need that old insert anymore, so I can either delete it or just right-click and hide it, and now it's no longer visible. So if I now also hide the insert with the hole, we'll see that there's actually no insert visible. And I can turn that one on again. Show insert with hole. There we go. So now I have all my objects in the same space. We're almost there. Now I want to create a similar kind of animation that we had before in the single objects. So you see at the bottom here, in the bottom right, we have these steps, and these are the same steps that we saw before in the individual assemblies. I can go to my assembly. I see Kalle, you put up your hand. You can go ahead. You're still muted. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, I write a question in the chat window.
Let me open it up. I think some might not be present right now. can you apply offset for that hole? Like to create a little bit more space to the sides of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think that's an option because it intersects directly with the 3D object, but you define the object yourself, right?
Okay.
So the bottle that I used, I could scale it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be the exact size of bottle that you want to actually use in production. So I could scale up that box a little bit and make it slightly bigger and then use that bottle, and that would in the end create that offset on the physical model.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so not with like a simple button, but yes, it's possible to have a little bit more space in there.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, we have our 3 objects, and now I can create a little animation. So I only have step 0 right now, so I can create step 1. Now in step 1, we want to end up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to step 0 and start moving stuff in step 0. I'll take my bottle to start with and put the bottle out of the way because we don't really need that bottle to be in the way right now. Then I'll take my insert with hole and I'll move that one out of the way as well. Then now that I have this in my hands, I can use these folded percentages to unfold it. And if I make it 0, then we'll see it just ends up as a flat thing. Now the fun thing here is that it actually remembers the order and way you folded it before. So you don't have to fold all the single folds again. You can just use percentages to fold it up to 100%. I'll grab my box and I'll do the same thing, fold it to 0. And we'll see how everything kind of fits together. So it looks like my insert has to move to the side a bit more. I can move my box a bit to the left, and that way everything fits nicely together. Of course, the box would be on the floor, so I can rotate it around the x-axis and put it on the floor. Actually, I'll put it that way because it's going to fold up, and I'll take the insert and I'll do the same thing. So now everything is kind of in a similar view. And I'll start my assembly just like that. That's step 0. Then I add a step 1, insert step 1. And in step 1, I'm going to fold up my box. So I'm going to say 100%. Of course, 100% isn't right. I'm also going to fold it around the X until it's right, just like that. I want to be able to put my bottle in there later. So to do that, I'll have to unfold it a little bit. So I can open up the box, and you can see it just opens up the top there. So if we go to around 60%, there we go. We have a perfectly open top of our box, but the rest is still folded the way we intended. Then I'll insert another step. In the next step, I'll take my insert there and I'll put that at 100. Let's see, I'll have to rotate that around the x-axis twice. I can move it towards my box already. And here again, I also want to keep this a little bit unfolded for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go slightly less until that extra fold that I created there opens up. So that will be apparently around 50%. No, I think somewhere around 50, 60 is fine. Let's do it like this. And then I can insert another step. I can take this box upwards and towards my box itself. I'll insert another step. I'll line it up nicely. And of course, if I want to be super duper accurate, I can do this using actual values here on the right in the coordinates. But that takes a bunch of time, and I'd like to keep this thing kind of on the move. And we can put that inside of our box just like that. And it looks like I'm slightly off on the x-axis, so I'll put it inside the other box. There we go. And this is kind of what I mean with the whole digital prototyping thing. If my box doesn't fit because it sticks out of the side of the box, and we'll see stuff like this, right? You'll notice, oh, actually, I made a design flaw. My box doesn't actually fit together. So it sticks through it. And this is where the prototyping actually makes a bunch of sense. It's where you notice that there might be something wrong. But of course, I designed this box so meticulously that there aren't a lot of mistakes in here. Then I can add another step. I can take my bottle and I can do a similar thing with the bottle, just move it up and get it towards my box. Let's see if I can make this a little bit more visual, up to the sides, and then have another step where I actually put it inside the box. So that looks kind of centered to me. Zoom out a little bit more so I can grab that axis again and put it all the way in there. And it, of course, it still perfectly fits where it's supposed to fit. Oh, the zooming is a little bit aggressive. Move that into my view, and I'll do the last bits of y coordinates like this until I see it poking through the bottom, because then I know I'm actually where I'm supposed to be. There we go, it's coming through the bottom now. So I'll go slightly back up, and I see there's a little bit of space there, so I might be off with the x-axis a little bit. So I'll go a bit more to the left. There we go. Thing is perfectly where it's supposed to be. And then in my next step, I can close up the top here because I still had that folded up to get that box inside. So I'm going to grab my inserts again, and I'm going to say, now you can fold up to 100, which means the top goes down. And I'll go another step and I'll grab my box again, and I'll say, now you can fold up to 100, and that will close the box. Oh, it looks like my insert is a bit too high. Let's get that down inside my box. There we go. So now my assembly is done. My whole thing is put together, and I can have a nice video of this. I can just say start. Oh, it's moving, but that's, there we go. Start, and we'll see it starts by picking up the box, folding it into its nice and 3D positioning. Then it takes the insert, it does a whole flip around thing to fold that up. I should be able to, there we go, disable all those coordinates and stuff. It takes it upwards, puts it inside the other box. Then it grabs the bottle. I can still move this around and zoom in and out and rotate it if I want to see this from a different angle. It puts that inside. You can see it clip a little bit, but that's because like I didn't pay huge attention to all the little details right now. It goes inside. You can see it appear through the window, and then it folds up the top. It looks like I have an empty step somewhere in there. I must have clicked on the new step twice. And there we go. And it moves because I also have an extra step at the end. But there we go. That kind of puts the whole thing together, and we have this nice animation to use it with. Like I said, now that we have this animation, we can actually do something with it. We can export this whole thing as a 3D PDF, or use one of the partners that are integrated by treeDiM, so we can upload to Augmented, which is an augmented reality app where you can print out this little QR code kind of thing and hold your phone up to it. And then on top of that printed object, you get your 3D model in like life-sized sizes. We have the Sketchfab, which is basically Instagram for 3D objects. So you have this online show-off platform where you can upload your models and you can show them off to everybody who wants to see them. And we have the Clee3D option, which is basically a digital storefront, which you can enter in 3D and look around on the shelves and see your object on the shelves. And you can also export a video file which contains your entire animation. And for that video file, you can go even further and use these tools at the top here to create a timeline with keyframes that show you, that can save the angle you're looking at, the way your object is rotated. So the way I am just like moving this around and rotating this and changing my angle, all of that can be saved inside your video clip. So it's very clear with zoom in and zoom out and all that kind of stuff, what you're looking at. Of course, the most shareable of these things is probably the 3D PDF. So if I click that, and I'll save this somewhere actually easy to get to. So let's just say desktop. It's called box.3d.pdf. I'll say okay. I can choose a bunch of stuff on how long the animation takes, what kind of layout I use, because it uses a PDF template with a bunch of buttons on it and stuff like that. And you can customize that. So you can put your own company logo on there if you want to make it a little bit prettier. than the default file. I'll say generate, you can see it happening. And if my Windows acts the way it's supposed to, there we go, we'll get the 3D PDF opened. Now the question is, will it allow me, see 3D content has been disabled. I'll have to say, not for this file, it isn't, trust this document. Will it reload or will I have to reopen it? I might have to reopen it. Yeah, I'll have to reopen it. That's a shame. So I'll go to, oh, actually I can just double click it here probably. There we go. And now we have our 3D objects actually inside our PDF. And I can I can zoom in and out, and I can actually show the complete animation. So if I say, oh, did I not have animation enabled when I exported it? You can actually choose that if you have it enabled or not. It's freezed at step 9. I don't want to freeze it. Let's redo this. There we go, saving. And we have our new file, and I'll have to trust 3D again, because of course it makes sense that it forgot about that. I'll reopen the file, and now we have the complete animation in there as well. You see, it actually forgets about the bottle, but that kind of makes sense because that's an extra object, and it can't use that the same way it generates a 3D for the rest of this. So now you see this as a 3D PDF. And like I said, the video is pretty much the same thing, and except you can't move around in the video file. So that's all that Picador 3D really is about. You can digitally put your stuff together, and it's used to prototype if you see if something goes wrong. Now I see that the question comes in to have a quick look at Paclip as well. We still have a few minutes. If anyone has any other questions about the 3D application specifically, and about how we work with our Picador 2D and 3D and put it together, and what the point of everything is, anything that I showed you that isn't completely clear, just go ahead, ask the question. You can unmute yourself or put it in chat. In the meantime, I'll take another minute to show off how easy it is to work with Paclip upon popular request. So I'll minimize the screens that I've been looking at, and you see all my Picador applications over here on the top right. I can open up the Paclip application, Paclip version 10 by treeDiM. And Paclip is a database, right? So it's just a folder within folders, within folders, within folders kind of situation. And I can pick something like the FEFCO. I can choose the FEFCO library. This gives me a bunch of categories. So let's say I choose the 400 series. Then I get a bunch of designs that are in that 400 series. And you can see the whole thing is present here. And let's pick something like, I don't know, maybe this one. Let's see what that does. And we get as a 2D and a 3D design for this. And if I pick the 2D, then I get my technical drawing in the similar style that we just saw in the Picador 2D application. So what we can do is we can use these parametrics. And I quickly spoke about parametrics before. Like I said, there are complete demonstrations for Paclip, for Picador 2D on our YouTube channel as well. If there is a lot of interest in this, let us know, and we can do an extra cafe specifically about how to work with Paclip and parametrics. I think we might have already done something like that once, but we can always do it again if there is enough interest. And now I can change these values, and you can see how everything changes when I change these values. So if I change the length of the box, you can see the box gets wider. If I change the width, you can see it gets wider. If I change the height, it gets higher. So everything that is relevant changes in size when I change any of these values. And this is for a predefined file inside the FEFCO library. But of course, you can also create your own files. So you saw maybe in the root, there was a Four Pees logo. So I can open up my own library. I can save my own designs in my own library. And then I can open those up, and I can just use my own designs and change my values. And you can actually create all these parametrics and define all the mods and put all the stuff together in the way you want it in Picador 2D. So that's definitely something we can look at again if there is interest in having another coffee about that in the future. One of the neatest way to show off what this can do is use the smart assembly. And I told you in the beginning, I stole something from Paclip in my design. I stole the bottom. I took it from the smart box here. So the smart box allows me to create a complete folding carton box from scratch just by defining variables. I can define the length, I can define the width, I can define the height, and then I can define the top and bottom. So if I say I want a tuck end, then I just get this. And this is all parametric. So if this box isn't 100 wide, but 50, then I say 50. And it changes all the values to work with the 50. If I want to have not a simple tuck end, but I also want this kind of lock thong in it, I can select that. And then it adds this thing, and it also creates a slot at the top here. Same for the bottom. I can go to the bottom sleeve. I can say I want that same thing that I stole before, which is not a snap lock, but the crash lock. It looks like it's messed up a little bit because I changed this dimension. I should have probably defined that size first. So if I say that's 100, you can see this is the exact thing that I stole for my own drawing. I just exported this drawing, took it in 2D, and copied this area for myself. So that's essentially how far you can go just with these parametrics. I can choose something like this, and then I can change the size. Maybe I want the glue flap to be bigger. Maybe I want this to be higher. And I can change my own design based on specific customer requests in essentially 2 minutes, which is pretty cool. Okay. And then if I want this to be in 3D, I just click the button, right? So I take the button. This opens it up in 2D. I click the button again. It'll probably ask me to save something. Nope, I have it in 3D. I can click the button again. And then I'm in the foldable solid space. I can select my area. I can have my piece of cardboard. And I can just fold it all up and have the box. And that's pretty much the entire workflow if you don't spend any time on it. Okay.